This is a special archive recording of a Bitcoin and Chill X Space, hosted by Wicked on August 10th, 2026, and preserved on YouTube by Rexpaces. The conversation covers the Coldcard security incident, Drivechains, and the eCash hard fork. Links to the original X Space and the Rexpaces upload are in the description. Now, here's the conversation.
It's hypothetical. I'm trying to figure out the way to cause the most chaos. If I could have thought of a bug like that, I would. That would be an optimal bug, one that is incredibly obscure, spread out kind of across the entire code base and hard to connect if you're scanning it or doing a security audit. And it's kind of like the perfect bug for this type of exploit. That's number one, right? And then I'll just reiterate for anyone who may have not been here initially. Number two would be shipping with firmware that conducts a nonce exfiltration at a certain block height. And so Portland has stated that firmware shipped on devices, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to reconstruct what that firmware is doing, right? And if it is different than, say, the source viewable firmware that you might flash on it on your own. And so I think the second leg of this attack, this kind of perfectly orchestrated attack by super evil genius, would be...
But how do you not update? How do you not fucking update the firmware to your cold wallet? Like, it's just the one thing that you have to keep secure. Like, you think you would get this
Mr. Hodl, there's 105 people in this space. I'm guessing most don't flash the firmware on their devices when they get it, unless it has some process by which it flashes the newest firmware on its own, right? Some devices you plug into your computer and then it flashes it automatically, the newest thing, and then checks the signatures and yada yada yada. But with cold cards,
I mean, that's the first thing I do whenever I get any device.
Right. So I mean, that's something we need to educate people about for sure. I agree.
Like anything, fucking when you get a phone, you update it. Like everything, you have to update it.
You're not thinking in terms of the average user. You're thinking in terms of the power user, or the user who's actually done their research and understands the risks associated with keeping
updating
shipped firmware on that device. Right. I agree. I also flash my own firmware. I have one cold card where I haven't. It's the Mark V. I just never got around to using it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to keep that shipped firmware on there, and I'm going to be conducting tests on a regular basis to see if my theory ever plays out. And after a certain block height, it starts to conduct this next attack. I think, as a matter of fact, if they had
without the dice roll,
well, listen. If this perfect attack had been thwarted, right, tripped up preemptively, unexpectedly, and you didn't want to conduct the rest of it, or you didn't want to get caught, what would you do?
Nothing.
No. You would rush out an emergency firmware fix and try to get everyone to remove the shipped firmware on that device to reduce the likelihood that someone would find the nonce exfiltration later when it actually begins, because that's already set on a timer. Right.
I don't know. And I have a hard time. I just have a hard time. I think people.
I'm not saying this happened for real. I'm just saying.
No. The update thing. Not that. The update. Like, when a cold card user, I would think is a power user. Like, if you're not a power user, you're getting a ledger.
I guarantee you, you're wrong.
I just feel like, how do you not fucking update your hardware? Like, I can't fathom that. I don't understand how you don't do that.
Because most people don't understand the threat.
Especially out of when it's brand new.
Can I just finish? Let me just finish the full attack, okay? Yeah. And then we can open up for discussion. D++, I see you there, Shooter, G-Money. I'll bring you guys up in a second. I just want to finish my thoughts. So Mr. Hodl, let me just finish real quick, and then we can have a lively discussion about all of this. So you guys can tell me how I'm retarded or how I'm a genius, evil genius. Okay. So, in my opinion, you would want the nonce exfiltration to have an absolute timer, block height based, so that at a certain block height, which you now flip it, where any signed transaction used, with any cold card using the shipped firmware will now expose your private key completely. Like, it doesn't even try to, like, I mean, it might encrypt it, obviously. It's not going to show it raw. It'll encrypt it, but show it completely. And so it will be very obvious if you're looking on chain that this is happening. But they, at this point, would want to do the complete attack and try to rug and RBF war as many things as possible in the fog of war. Because remember, the first leg is you've already grinded all of the available seeds from the RNG, from the limited entropy RNG. So you have those tables prior to even shipping these devices. You've got those ready to go. You're probably watching to see, well, first of all, you have the timer for the nonce exfiltration, but you're also watching to see how, your balances are growing based on people who have just done the RNG. You also might be grinding phrases on top of those, just in case you want to try to find some additional funds that may have been hidden by passphrases in the meantime while you wait to conduct this kind of perfect attack. And then as soon as you get close to, probably within a block or two, right? Maybe the block before. As soon as you get close to that absolute block height, after which nonce exfiltration, that leg of the attack begins, you trip the wire for the RNG attack. Now, what we witnessed with Coldcard a week ago was child's play compared to what it could have been had the attacker grinded through the entire set first and then tripped the wire later. They were obviously under a time constraint because they knew it was only a matter of time before some other retard pointed Kimmy at that same code base. So it makes sense why they did things kind of quickly and a bit retardedly. But had they found the exploit without the use of Kimmy and known that it was such an obfuscated exploit that no one would find it, they would have also spent the time to grind the tables, maximize the amount of coins being rugged. I mean, they probably wouldn't have done it all at once, though, to be honest. I think. Anyways, let me just finish the thought, though. I'm trailing in and out of these ideas, but I hope the picture I'm painting is beginning to become clear. So you rug all the RNG ones in one foul swoop. Boom. Thousands of coins gone, right? Literally in one block. Everyone panics. They all rush Twitter to try to figure out what's going on. Many just start to move their coins if they weren't people who were affected. But this is where the evil genius of the second leg comes in. In the fog of war and in the panic, everyone's moving their coins as quickly as they can without really checking to see if that's a risk. But it actually is the second leg of the attack that allows for this evil genius to now sweep those too, because those private keys have now been leaked with that movement. Now, not only have you rugged the thousands of coins that use the RNG, you're now rugging all the ones left over that had the shipped firmware on it. Now, of course, Mr. Huddle, I know the most ultra paranoid people would probably still survive this attack. And actually, that's part of, I mean, I don't know, maybe that's just survival of the fittest.
I
I
just
think
don't think
MBK.
I don't think that's ultra paranoid though. Like I don't think that is a ultra paranoid would be
I think it is.
multi-sig, multi-vendor, rolling dice, and
They would be
passphrases on top.
They'd be protected
That's
too.
the
Yeah.
ultra.
And they would survive as well. Assuming they flashed their own firmware, assuming that they only had keys made by cold cards below the threshold of signers in the multi-sig, they would survive too, right? So in other words, I mean, the ultra paranoid survived this attack, but the attack itself causes wreckage, probably an order of magnitude higher than what we saw. And what we saw last week was incredibly damaging. So imagine if it was 10 times worse. What kind of effect that would have had on the network and the ripples it would have had. Imagine not only the number of coins being rugged having, multiplied some factor, but also the number of histories being correlated and privacy being nuked across all those devices as well, right? So you just you cast the net in two separate spots, both far and wide. And yeah, there's little slivers where people get through and aren't affected, but the vast majority are. And that's how you conduct the most optimal attack is you first pull the ripcord on the one that you're kind of tracking diligently and you can just sweep in one fall swoop. And then in the fog of war, as everyone's panicking, you actually wait for them to reveal themselves and you snipe them as they're running away. Literally how you would do this. It's like it's fucking war gamed out, bro. Like this is how you would do it in a real war too. You fucking send a big fucking bomb and then you snipe off the people who are running away with their heads off. You know what I'm saying? Like
Why would you snipe them as they're running away? You mean like people that are in multi-sig, like with
I'm just
two
saying,
cold
like
card?
that's the visual I'm getting. But it makes sense to me why you would do it that way. And also, like, why wouldn't you do it that
Why
way?
wouldn't they just? Why do they need to wait for them to move? Why wouldn't they just rug them right away?
Because they don't have their private keys yet. That's what the nonce exfiltration is. You don't get the
Oh, you mean
private
when
keys until they
okay,
move
yeah,
the
you get a
coins.
private key when they start moving the coins. Yeah. Well,
Boom,
in that case,
bingo,
you
bingo. Understand what I'm
you need
saying, Mr. Hoddle? And
you need a
nobody can
block
detect
by.
and nobody can detect that leg of the attack until that block height's been passed, if it is
It's already
based on
set
an
up. Yeah.
absolute block height and set up
Yeah.
prior. So it's something that, if it is, like I think it would be prudent if anyone does have, a cold card and they're ultra paranoid like me, do not get rid of the shipped firmware on that device if you still have one with the original shipped firmware, and conduct tests periodically to see if any of the nonce values are funky. And if they are at any point in time, you need to
So
ring the
wouldn't we
alarm
already
bells
see that though? Wouldn't we
immediately.
see that?
No,
Wouldn't we see
because it
that
was
from
tripped
people
early.
that didn't?
No, it was tripped early. I think if they had set a block height prior, the block height hasn't come yet. I think they were expecting to have much more time to build up the effectiveness of the attack.
So when the block time comes, you're saying that this
If I had to
X,
choose a block time, just picking one out of my hat as an evil genius,
bro,
I
this is
would
fucking
pick
beyond evil genius.
I would
This is
pick
taking it to a level where like
I
this
would
is some
pick block height
CIA.
I would pick block height 1,000,000. That's what I would
Oh, we got
pick.
some time.
Not much. That's a block height I'd pick. Anyways,
I'll
I'll
take
bring
the
some
other
people up
side of
now.
this.
No,
I'll
no,
take the
I
other
know.
side of that bet.
By the way, I agree. I agree.
Definitely take that
I
other
agree.
side of
The
that bet.
likelihood of this being true, I believe, is extremely, extremely, extremely low. I think it's
I'm not saying it
probably.
can't happen with another hardware wallet in the future, like a CIA hardware wallet ready to rug, like a much bigger one than fucking Coldcard, right? Like Coldcard did
I
not have
think.
that many
Well,
users.
I think that yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if other ones have backdoors and there's some funky shit that happens in the future at some point. But regardless, like you know, this one
Tails,
was
baby,
yeah. I
make
mean,
tails your friend.
this one was kind of a perfect setup for, especially for catching a lot of these like pretty what an intelligence agency might call high risk individuals, because it's a certain type of person who would opt for a cold card versus a ledger or a trezor. And those are the types of people are trying to escape the system and stay out forever. So those are the types of people you want to rug and nuke their privacy. You understand?
I was just trying to roll some dice with their hardware wallet. That's all I was trying to do.
I think
I wasn't doing
the other
fucking
aspect
tip
of this
85.
the other aspect of this which I think is I just heard of this one in the back channels. I won't say who said it, but I thought it was a funny aspect because it's just, you know, heightening my paranoia, which I love. I love being paranoid, if you can't tell. Um, the Blockclock being a phone home
Yeah, that's funny.
to
Yeah,
to,
that was
correl-
that.
to
That was.
correlate xpubs with OGs so that they don't rug those guys like too early or something. I mean, obviously, in the final leg of the attack, whatever block height 1 million, you rug everybody because you're trying to cause chaos and panic, and you're trying to remove as much Bitcoin from the system as possible and whatever. But leading up to it, what if you want to get fed a little bit? So you rug a little bit here and there, right? Just a couple of fish here and there, a couple minnows. Well, if you have lists of who bought block clocks, and then those block clocks are being associated with particular wallets based on IPs, and maybe based on keyloggers or who knows what the else they could be putting in there, then at least leading up to it, you're not going to be rugging like Mr. Hodl, right? If Mr. Hodl was dumb enough not to take the precautions, but like Mr. Hodl's caught up in the list of people, and you are trying to choose random ones to kind of rug along the way, well, you're not going to rug Mr. Hodl because but Mr. Hodl doesn't have block clock. So like maybe you don't rug Wicked, for example, because if Wicked gets rugged, ain't nobody buying the Coldcard ever again, right? I'd be out there fucking preaching how Coldcard fucked me. So you have to know like the people who have those products, especially if you're trying to rug little bits at a time leading up to it, stay fed, right? Yeah, Mandrick's one of them down there. Definitely not going to rug Mandrick leading up to it. Hell no, that would be terrible. Can you imagine? Mandrick got rugged, game over, bro. So anyways, I mean, I think the block clock could play kind of an interesting role in that, you know, it could cover their ass. But again, that's only if they're being greedy and trying to take a little bit along the way to get fed. I think that's risky to be doing that. But I mean, maybe they were. Who
I mean, they
knows?
did sell
In this complete
thousands.
hypothetical.
They did sell thousands of fucking devices, right? Like they did make money. It's not like they weren't making anything. They were profitable.
They made very little, which is why MBK was always so upset their harbor wallets for making so much more. I mean, they were peanuts, right?
I mean, the fact that fucking
That's why he had
Passport
such a
took
chip
their
on his
shit
shoulder.
and then fucking raised
got a
$30
seed
million.
round for
Yeah, $20 million. That probably
I think
definitely
it was
fucking
10
pissed them
million,
off.
but
10
still, yeah,
million?
that pissed him off by a lot for sure. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine, right?
That's how it all got started.
And let's be honest, if you've used one of these Passport devices, especially their newest one, I mean, it feels like a fucking modern solid device, whereas your cold card feels like a piece of shit plastic fucking like calculator, right? Some weird. I mean, it's cool. I like it, right? And like the firmware, the software side of things is pretty dope. It has a lot of features, like the advanced feeling of it when you're using it. But when you hold it, this thing's a fucking piece of shit, and it breaks all the time.
I mean, there's room then for the market for to have cold card features, but a badass hardware. Like this thing, like a fucking nice hardware, but you need the features, right? People
Well, what
want
you
like
could
the
do.
power users need those features.
You know what you could probably do at some point in the not too distant future? You could probably point Kimmy and say, hey, I really like all the features in Cold Card. Can you safely translate that into a firmware that I can flash onto my or Prime?
Well, they have an SDK for Rust apps. I'm put all my shit on Prime last week, so if I get fucked over, I'll tell you first.
Isn't the Prime like it feels pretty fucking nice?
Yeah, it's definitely it's got weight to it for like its size. It's very weighty. It's metal. It feels nice. Yeah, it's definitely.
God, if I get a job at Foundation, I will show the fuck out of this product. Just kidding.
Well, I does feel it's the nicest one I've had. Like it's the nicest. I had a Ledger for a while until it looked really bad, and I was like, fuck that. And then I bought the old Passport. I bought it. Like I got this.
The old Passport's nice too. I mean, that one, you can tell they're kind of they've been iterating, and like that one's nice. I like that it has, like the battery in the back that you can take out and the magnets and everything. And it's
Yeah.
solid and metal on the inside. And then, anyways, I mean, they definitely have a good designer. Whoever's designing those products like knows how to design products for normies. Because I'll just admit it, I'm a normie when it comes to like product design. I'm like, ooh, heavy, shiny. Ooga
Yo,
booga.
Wicked. Yeah, Luga Booga is my favorite these days. In this exfil attack you're talking about, would
Mhm.
using something like Sparrow, which I know has a feature to help prevent that, do anything?
So Sparrow, as far as I know, does not have a feature to prevent that. But what you could do, if you were really, I mean, this is what I will be doing, as a matter of fact. I'm not going to be holding any Bitcoin on these devices, but I am going to be putting the same seed phrase on one cold card, which I've flashed the firmware on, and one cold card, which still has the originally shipped firmware. And periodically, I'm going to be, well, I guess I do have to have a little Bitcoin to kind of make a transaction. So maybe I'll put like 1,000 sats in there, whatever. Periodically, I'll be creating a transaction and signing with both devices, and then seeing if the signatures have mismatches, right? And I
Then you'll have
won't
to figure out which
and
one's
I won't
fucked.
broadcast them. Well, no, I mean, well, it's pretty obvious the one, but I think all of the source viewable code for Coldcard has now been sufficiently reviewed, right? So I'm like, I'd be pretty confident in the claim that there's no nonce exfil happening on the source viewable code. But what you can never prove, right, or even verify is what the shipped firmware is doing. That shipped firmware could be doing whatever the fuck you want, or whatever the fuck they want. So like, that's the reason why it's important to flash firmware on your device when you get it.
And I can
But
confirm,
a lot
Wicked,
of people
that
don't do that.
I never flashed the firmware when I got mine. So like,
Yeah.
for
So I
Hawk to
mean,
say
even
everybody did it, like, no,
yeah,
dude, we just like went with
most
the
people
fucking
don't.
program.
Right. Exactly. So now I'm gonna get Shinobi up here to tell me how retarded I am, and to probably get off of spaces.
The
Here we are
the
again.
one thing with Foundation that was I found a bug and filed it. It wasn't a bug like a security bug, but I got the Prime. Zach sent me one because we were just talking about like doing other stuff like identity stuff with it because it does like 2FA.
Ooh.
It does a little bit more
Yeah.
than just Bitcoin stuff.
Dude, I
And
can't
so
wait till we finally live in this hyper Bitcoinized
better
world,
world.
dude. Jesus Christ, Daniel. Just
Yeah.
build that shit, bro. What's taking so
I know
long?
we're working on it, but there was one bug where it wasn't technically a bug, it was just really bad UX. I booted it up and it needed it was trying to do a firmware update. It's like, okay, I'm going through this update. And you had to update before it would let you, create your new, seed and stuff on it. And it failed every time. It just kept failing. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this thing? And it was because it had like, you use the companion app and it had Tor on. And I guess for whatever reason, like Tor downloading the file was just like the one thing it was like Tor was fucking bad at. So that's why I kept failing. And I was talking to him on Signal. He's like, yeah, just turn Tor off just for the download thing. It'll work. And because the error is like super generic, like you would never know. And so I did it and immediately it worked. And I was just like, fuck, okay. So
Kind of
I
cool how
found
they
it.
have you saw in the setting, I'm sure you already know, but then settings where you can just like see the logs going by on the device itself.
Yeah.
Not that that's particularly useful, but it is just cool to watch.
Yeah, and it was nice. I mean, the error message could have been easy. Like if he was like, that's the only thing we ever get. Like he's like, we just gotta put something in the next update, and I guess they are.
Hey, Wicked, question for you. Do you think it's odd how many products they actually were able to come up with such a small team?
No, not really. Not that many.
Well, it was also
I don't
a
know.
janky plastic piece of shit. So
Yeah.
I mean, how many people you need, man? You're like, all right, we're gonna grab the worst fucking function.
Yeah, but you see like Ledger and Trezor that are much bigger companies, and they've got very slim product line. Where these guys were making like 10 different things from the open dime to the tap sign. Like they must have been outsourcing the hardware, software to some degree as well, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, I mean, it felt like Temu though. So you're kind of like, oh, how many? You could probably do a few of these. You know, if you, especially if you're using form factors. I don't know. Is it a custom form factor, Wicked? Like the actual housing?
I mean, yeah, I think so. Especially, well, maybe not for the I would imagine maybe the mark like 3, 4, 5 and lower. This is the mark number products seem to be pretty generic. It's just like a fucking calculator basically. But I think the Qs started to have a little bit more custom form factor. One thing, so one hole to punch in this evil genius, theory, and one reason why you wouldn't necessarily.
What are you talking about? They're all custom PCBs and like form factor designs.
No, sorry, I was talking about the case. But Daniel, what were you talking about?
I was just talking about the case. I wonder if they were used.
Yeah,
I couldn't recall whether it was like.
Dude, they custom made those too, dude. I literally have a fucking prototype of a cold card case that never got busted off the 3D printer spine.
Okay, so I guess they did then. Yeah, of course they did. Yeah, what am I even talking about? Okay. Anyways, one of the holes to punch in this evil genius thing is like as you scale and start producing more hardware, it gets increasingly riskier and riskier to flash the malware onto it because you have to trust more people to do that without them keeping records of that malware, and then actually getting leaked at some point. That's just one thing to consider. And if it's one dude building all these devices in his garage, then he can do whatever he wants. If it's a couple, then probably keep that locked down. But once you get to a larger team who's building the hardware, then it becomes riskier to contain. Is all I would say in terms of just the risks associated with this and some holes to punch into the theory, which again I think is a fairly flimsy. Like I think it would be probably the most optimal way to cause the most chaos if some evil genius could actually plan this whole thing out, which I don't even know if it's possible. Like it's a very crazy idea, and even the RNG exploit itself is just so wildly obscure that it's hard to believe someone could plan that themselves and that wasn't just a bug. If they
But it also happened to slice perfectly in the math that avoided collisions, but also brute forceable. So that's unique.
Well, but
The floor of the RNG was enough, right, to avoid collisions.
But so I've actually we've confirmed that the RNG that was used was indeed the default from the MicroPython module. So that wasn't something that Peter like fine tuned. It was just what was given. That actually was, it looks like, just a coincidence. So that did quell some of my paranoia, and probably should for you too as well. But that being said,
were you coughing when you said some?
Maybe not all,
I'm
some at
coughing.
least.
You should listen to fucking Shinobi. He's always fucking right.
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, hey, wait until block high 1 million, and we'll see who's right.
Do you like my video, Wicked? Did you like that? That was like complete kismet of the universe. Like the lights just glitched on for a whole 5 minutes. Well, that eerie music happened playing on my own. I was just like, I got it. I got it.
I sent mine off to Portland today. They're in transit. Portland's gonna have them by Thursday, and start doing a bunch of tests on them to see if if they in me.
If they glow in the dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dude, I really do fucking Jesus Christ want Portland to write some better firmware for this thing. Like, oh my god, dude. Like that, like this thing looks fucking nice, but holy fuck, is this like the buggiest, most unstable fucking like software I've ever fucking run on anything. Holy fucking shit.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, Their
The
focus was elsewhere when they were working on that product.
Dude, they put like really solid work into the hardware for the block clocks, and then the software, they're like, this doesn't manage money. 0 fucks given, slop, and then just like back to the fucking cold card and shit. Breaks all the time, fucking control for fucking
I might let Portland keep the micro for his troubles and then ask for the mini back. I mean, it wasn't bugged. But even if it was bugged, maybe I still want it back. I'll just tell him to fix that.
To debug it and debug it?
Yeah. Can you imagine the chaos and panic that would ensue?
Dude, you know that like if Portland didn't think of this himself, I am going to put the idea of him tweaking the firmware with a custom build
he suggested he
hi
do that already.
on the screen. Just hi Wicked.
No, I see what you're saying.
Hey, Paul is in the audience. Can we bring him up and talk about the spork?
Yeah. Now that we've
the spork, we got to go from the fork to the spork.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Wicked, it looks like Sparrow has some integration, like some exfil protection specifically for BitBox, where there's some type of host nonce that it does.
So BitBox has that already implemented on their hardware. So I think there's ways, But it's cool that Sparrow's already doing that with that device. Hey, Paul.
What's up, man? Hey, am I allowed to call it?
Is a pedophile unless they support the eCash fork, pedophile, and a child rapist and murderer.
Can we officially call it?
Am I doing it right? Will I get attention now?
Can we officially call it the spork? Can we have your blessing?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, that's going to be it from now on. The spork.
The very first.
My entire life, as you can imagine, has been like you check in at a hotel, and they're like, "Oh yes, Mr." Then like a long pause, and you just think, what are they going to try? Like I've heard many versions.
Can you change?
Sometimes I just say Paul is fine.
You're Paul Spork.
That's a good. Actually, in high school, as you know, there was a Paul. Because a lot of people in Bitcoin call me this. There's a Paul Sports because it actually the C is pronounced Sztorc. The Polish C is a different letter, so people called me Paul Sports, even though I was not that sporty in high school, but it was at least.
It was
if
just
you want to know.
Okay, it was simpler for everyone involved.
Right. It's pretty good.
How do you say your last name?
It's just Sztorc. The C is a different letter, if you care, in Polish, and it's a TS sound.
Like
it's kind of like a brand
baby carrying bird, like a baby carrying bird.
Sztorc that's a common meme in we have like cousin group chat and stuff, and people put like Sztorc. Like that's a lot of people's like fake. You know how like when you become an adult and you make like a Facebook, but you don't use your like real name because people are like teachers or something. So some people do like Sztorc or Strock or something. They do like weird stuff like that. In case you guys care. This is now Paul Chat.
Hey, fork season's off to a riveting start. When is the Pcash fork?
This 23rd, but since people are very confused, what I thought was I'd do it in stages.
Well,
so this one
is no trading, okay? No
you can
trading
warm up
at fork time so that I don't owe any fucking taxes because of you.
Wait. What date did you say? Is it a block height?
It is a block height.
So what's the block height?
The block height 2 weeks after the 110, whatever you call it.
It's the next difficulty
it's
adjustment.
coming up. And that's the alpha practice, and there'll be beta practice September 20th approximately, and then the real one will be 6 weeks, 3 after that on Halloween. So I thought it's kind of ready to go in the technical sense, but I don't think people are ready in a integration sense. So I thought we'll boil the frog a little bit. This one it'll be trying to resemble the real network in every way. But it will be fundamentally a test. So it'll be like kind of an opportunity for everyone to just try to test your coin splitting and eCash dumping strategies so that with the real fork goes, you can quickly dump it all. as quickly as you want, so you can practice with this September one as an incentive to get people to buy the practice one. If you somehow manage to accumulate 1,000, you can turn those in for 10 real ones, and then for the September one, if you accumulate 1,000 of the test fork, you can turn those in for 20 real ones.
How many do I need to accumulate to get a commemorative spork? Like, maybe I can.
Do you want me to like sign? Should I like go? Should I do?
You should
like
totally sign
is kind of lining up. So like a tab comp, should I do like?
Yes.
I can like
have
sign
a fucking
spork.
box of sporks and sign the handle, and then oh my god, dude, I
gotta get like we need to get like some. Are there like big ones we can get somewhere? Like I don't know why anyone would
Amazon's
make those.
got
but
everything. I will find you some big sporks if this is the case.
I think because it'll be right. Because I think the final tab conf is in October.
Late October 21st or something. I don't know. I can't
So it'll be very close.
Well, like the 12th or the 13th.
It's going to be a banger.
Wait, so Paul,
So that'll be the end of
why didn't
Paul.
you
The
name
end of
it eCash? I'm just curious because that would have been way more mimetic.
Well, that's a good point. I think you want to pick a name where if it went, you want to plan for success and plan for like if it hit 8 billion people. So that was kind of the idea, was not let the name be a roadblock and just pick a generic name, like email. I think it's a great name. It's a good, and names are hard. And I noticed that you guys just spend all your time in spaces all day. No one seems to have anything to do. I always see the spaces between you and Stu TXO, and it's like everyone's just constantly in spaces. No one has like a real job, which is great.
It's called
that's what Bitcoin is about. But I wonder, we haven't heard Luke's name, and actually naming things is pretty hard. Maybe you guys know what it is, but
George
naming
Michael.
things is
I think his name is George
pretty
Michael.
hard. No one docks poor Luke. He's been through enough. He's like Gollum. We have to just feel bad for him, I think. But what is the name going to be of the 110 fork? Does anyone know? I don't think anyone does.
No. So Mr. Hoddle's in the back channel Discord. And apparently they're talking about calling it B Money.
I think they should call it the Big Dombrowski coin.
I mean, I see that in my head. I'm seeing that AI movie play right now. He's like, "Oh, I needed that BIP 110 to really tied the chain together," and he's like, "Come on, man, that was my BIP."
I had
the
to
rug.
go door to door asking people
And then
filters.
who would be the guy? Would it be Mechanic or Cratter? Cratter would be the guy. Am I the only one who cares about the rules? Or maybe that'd be like Adam Back. You could flip it around and be like,
please stop. This is like a movie that maps to like any meme, and you're like killing it. You're just beating it to death and like ruining that magical mimetic property.
But the point I was trying to make is naming things is actually pretty hard. So just because they're talking about calling it B Money, that doesn't mean that like, because then you got to worry about, is the domain available? What if anything is available? Like what kind of like, you got to set up your GitHub, your email and all your stuff. It's actually, I think it's actually kind of hard, actually. And so I think it's a huge disadvantage for Luke to be trying to plan it out in advance when you got people like Mr. Hoddle like spying it out and it's all undecided and they want to launch September 1st. And so I think that'd be really hard. You definitely want, when people name a child, they usually never tell anyone until the child is born because they want it to be like a fait accompli, They want it to be like, it's an accomplished fact. It's a done deal. No more negotiating, no more weighing in, no more complaining, no more bike shedding. Everyone's got an opinion,
Meet Bob.
Sorry?
Meet Bob.
Meet Bob. Yeah. Is that someone who's bike shedding? I didn't understand that.
Oh, God damn it.
I don't think he's trying to be deep. Or is that a what about Bob joke? I don't know. I can't even tell. I'm right there with Paul, actually. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah. How did we end up here, Daniel? That's what I asked myself.
Well, I just saw you in the thing, and I knew the spork was coming, and I'm pretty invested in the meme. I did the whole, thing in Gemini with the little picture, and I thought it was pretty funny. So I just wanted to make sure that you were approved. You knew it was lighthearted. Wasn't trying to go after you. The spork thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, obviously, I knew when you propose a hard fork of Bitcoin, you're signing up for a certain amount of like
fun,
deranged hatred, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely going to come to TabConf if we do this.
I mean, I do think a lot of things, sometimes I think about the 110 fork and I just think this is just so bizarre because it's like the opposite of everything. Like I always knew that, you present people with the BIP 300 activator, that's what 51% would activate. So that's the soft fork option. And then eCash is sort of like, okay, if you turn the soft fork down, then obviously it's because you don't have 51% hash rate support. So that was like obvious to me. Okay, the hard fork is what you do when you don't have the hash rate. And bizarrely, with Bitcoin Cash, with SegWit2x, they had 83% of the hash rate. So if they had done a mandatory extension block to increase the block size, then the large blockers would have won the block size war. So every single time, it just seems bizarre to me. I just think, okay, why didn't the large blockers do the mandatory extension block because they had 83% hash rate signing SegWit2x? Why did Luke insist on a soft fork when they had 2% or really 0.5% of hash rate for the soft fork? And then, so it's just like now they're doing the hard fork, but they don't have any of this stuff pricked out, the name, the brand. The hard fork is also, I think it's way worse than Bitcoin Cash. I mean, I presumably people here would agree. I don't, maybe they don't, but
at least worse than BSV, in my opinion. I think it's
at least, worth and less. Of course, I completely agree. Like that, even Bitcoin Cash was like, okay, at least we get to see us experiment with 8 megabyte blocks, and then later 32 megabyte, and then whatever. So we get a little bit of competition. And then with Bitcoin SV, I also thought it had scientific value in the sense of like, okay, we can see like here's what happens if you uncap the block size.
I just can't imagine a dude doing a fork and legitimately like Craig Wright being like, now that dude's weird. You know what I mean? Like, fuck.
I know that would be so funny if he like joined the space right now or before. That would have been so ingenious. Like just from like a branding, marketing.
Paul. I feel like you lucked out. Like they did such a bad job with 110. It actually makes your fork look like oh wow, this is like
totally agree.
It's not that bad, Jesus.
Yeah, I was kind of vaguely wondering like if I would become like the villain and get a lot of attention that way, but that was a swing and a miss on that theory because Luke, he became like an even more crazed villain, and he was a much better villain than even I could probably be because he's got even more Bitcoin clout, and he was like just saying even more deranged stuff like, of course, he was saying, of course, 110 will activate. Obviously, it will. Obviously, it has consensus. Obviously, the people who don't support it are in favor of CSAM. Obviously, he was just scoring these villain points. And I don't blame anyone for, everyone's like, oh, do we want to beat up Luke, who is like this huge target, and he's like so antagonistic. And then it's like, or do you want to come into the lion's den with Paul and talk about this obscure, weird Drivechain thing people barely understand?
I remember that scene.
Like have like minutes of silence instead. Can we do neither of these things?
Oh no, we're gonna have to have this fork, dude. Just because I just want I got to get him to sign the fucking spork. I guess he'll do it whether it happens or not. But I think it's it's all fun games. I mean, I get to dump. I mean, I'm fucking cool at it.
Technically, get to dump 3 times. I don't know who will list I have an interesting plan for liquidity and exchange integration. So I'm hoping to be able to announce it very soon. But even still, really the main event is delayed till October. But like I said, I think it's because we really had lots and lots of questions about like things that I thought maybe we could explain better. People are like, oh, how do I mine? How do I whatever? I was like, oh, I guess it's not really clear to people. So we were just late in like assembling some things. Some stuff is not our fault. It's just related to like crazy app store stuff and like just lots of delays about like.
Who are the main actors? It's you and who? Who like Layer 2 Labs or whatever?
I kind of volunteered to take the, what you might call the, I don't know, to like take the, criticism for other people. But if you can join the Telegram group. You can see there's about 920 people in the Drivechain Telegram group. And then there's a eCash group that's newer, but it has a few people. We did raise $5 million worth of investment. So even though people don't really hear,
people get? What are the 5 million? What are they getting?
Satoshi's
they get
coins.
the Satoshi's coins.
Oh shit!
So I know that the coins sold at some price. So I have, they sold above the Bitcoin SV price. So I was like, oh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, if we somehow came out ahead of Bitcoin Cash, I would think, well, we had the number one Bitcoin fork. So I don't know if that's in the cards, but I think actually Bitcoin Cash made a lot of mistakes, and actually they were not a permanent solution to anything because, they hard forked to expand the block size, but then they would have had to keep hard forking to expand the block size. So, and no one thinks that the unlimited L1 full node cost is a good idea. And then they ran into the same developer capture problem that they said that they had. Like they were like, whatever, we hate Bitcoin Core, we hate Greg Maxwell, whatever. Then they were like, oh, our own devs suck. We also hate them. We hate Omri or whatever. So they didn't solve any of their own problems permanently. And I have, a lot of issues with Bitcoin Cash. I think it's actually not that great. So I would hope to be better than that. And if we were, then that would be pretty cool. It's interesting how Bitcoin Cash and stuff has fallen so much in terms of price. I haven't looked it up. I think it was like, I don't know if it's like something like when the, 200 to
200 right now.
500 when Bitcoin was like 50,000 to 100,000, right? So you see like Bitcoin, maybe like Bitcoin could be 100,000, Bitcoin Cash could be like whatever, like 500. So that's like that's like 0.5%. So you can see like the number one Bitcoin fork is 0.5% and even the number one altcoin, which is Ethereum, is like less than 25% of BTC. So BTC really is the king. And actually, in one sense, maybe it's arrogant to try to beat Bitcoin Cash, but in another sense, I think that's really, really low bar. It's just I'm just going to give people 1%, on their Bitcoin, which is not very much. And that would be double Bitcoin Cash, right? So I'd like to think that's because Bitcoin Cash is objectively not that good, but maybe mine will be even worse than that. So I don't know. Just trying to give you guys some free money.
You're also measuring from different places, right? Because Bitcoin Cash started out at a much higher percentage and then dropped over time to that lower amount.
That's right. And I think actually people should reflect on the fact that these hard forks, I think, could be really good for everyone, because when Bitcoin Cash first launched, it was something like 15% of BTC's price.
Yeah, don't get
I mean,
hopes up, though. That's not what I'm trying to say.
But I think there were a lot of forks after Bitcoin Cash, but these were mostly jokes, right? So no one really expects like Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Diamond. They weren't really like about anything. There wasn't like a philosophical impetus or, kind of rise and detra. There wasn't a reason for those forks. So, and then Bitcoin SV was a fork of Bitcoin Cash after like it had already fallen for years and years and years. So actually we can't learn that much from, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Private, Bitcoin whatever, or even Bitcoin SV in terms of a political,
Paul,
yes.
Have you considered the unholy matrimony of going to Luke and saying, Luke, you can make your holy drive chain. Like you come over here instead, have the first drive chain. It can have Bible verses in every Coinbase and it'll be pristine. And we will form this Voltron of sorts. Have you ever considered this?
I had some people in the group actually proposed that. They said, "Oh, can we have a 110?" Not anything. That's why they're not going to get it.
Well, I think some of the hatred comes from 2014, right? He lost the Opportune wars back then for Counterparty. So this has been on his mind for like at least a decade.
Unfortunately, I really think it was a big mistake to not. This is like throw the ring into the fire. Speaking of Gollum and metaphors, we should have really just uncapped the op return the whole time, because it planted this seed. Who would have known if someone had told you, like, oh, we're going to lose all of 2024 through 2026, half of 2026, talking about uncapping it? I don't think that. I don't think. And then Luke actually killed an awful lot of stuff. Luke gets credit for a lot of things, which is fine. But I think BIP47 was actually very, very good, especially considering how early in the timeline it was. And we could have had no addresses, for 10 years. So where would the user, and who knows, if we weren't distracted by this issue, maybe the whole path would have been different. Who knows? I don't know, but maybe we would have had other stuff.
Paul, question for you, and thank you for building on Bitcoin. Can you maybe explain the difference between like your Drivechain and what maybe something like an L2 Counterparty would offer? Like I'm trying to understand the differences between both and the advantages or disadvantage of each one.
Well, Counterparty, they're very, very similar, I suppose, but Counterparty cannot move BTC that is inside of it. And that's the whole point, really, is that you would do stuff you'd make transactions and payments with BTC. So that's how you'd make BTC payments on the L2, Drivechain L2. Or you would do stuff like, you have like a Namecoin L2, and you would have like this BitDNS thing that's similar to Namecoin that Satoshi helped invent in 2010. And you would buy and sell the names like with BTC, and then the seller would obtain the payment, and then they would be able to walk that money back, withdraw the L2 back on L1. The same way you can have money on the Lightning Network. Lightning Network is L2. But notice that when it's in the Lightning Network, it has different properties, like you can split it to different decimal points and things. But then when you withdraw it, you end up with the L1 transaction. And everyone here knows that there's not enough space on the L1. So ultimately, users will have to be on the L2 in some way or another. And so the question is just which stuff is mandatory for which people. And I think Drivechain adds an awful lot of creativity for that. Basically, it says anything you can do with an altcoin, you could do with Bitcoin. And that's the idea, is not to like necessarily defend every idea, but just to say, hey, if it can be done on an altcoin, why not do it with Bitcoin? And it's slightly reduced security model, but not really, because the security model is basically that the miners enjoy collecting transaction fees more than they enjoy destroying the source of those fees. And so that's not really that.
Shinobi with all of this
it's not really that strong of a. It's not really that strong of an assumption. I think it's certainly better than nothing. And then, of course, only people have to voluntarily go to the L2. So even if you think it's a bad idea, then why stop other people from doing it?
But it is.
Does someone want to do like a health and wellness check?
The miner can just.
For the same reason that I don't let people dump shit in their fucking river, air quote, upstream from my river, up quote, because I still have to deal with the consequences of them dumping shit in the water.
Yeah, see, there you are, Shinobi. I was gonna call for a health and wellness check there. You hadn't yelled yet, so I figured something was wrong.
He's running some tests on his Blockclock right now.
Well, I just wanted to bring up, because there's a new protocol called Xchain coming out like this month, I guess. That's based on kind of like the counterparty stuff, and it allows.
All right. I mean, okay, it's bad enough letting one person.
No, it's been around since 2014. That's why. That's all.
No, that's not what this is.
But one interesting thing to point out, though, is that have been inventing stuff this whole time. A lot of it is terrible. 99% of it is terrible. But people have been inventing things, and people have been pushing the envelope in other ways. For example, someone told me, I think at the beginning of 2022, I think that was the year, January, someone told me that Solana only had really 3 nodes, or maybe only 1, because the cost of the Solana full node was so expensive that they were like basically on death's door. And they just had the one guy, the creators of Solana. But over time, they they got it down, and now it's like you need to have this huge array of RAM and like what I don't know the exact specs, but the specs are enormous. But it's down to something like whatever, like $20,000 a year, and now there's many more than just 3. So the question is, obviously, that's very different than what we would like in Bitcoin, but are we really going to bet on our own infallibility? And I think that is a big mistake. We should just let people try their own stuff out. Maybe 99% of it doesn't work. And let's give people options. The design of Drivechain is to minimize the effect of the L2s on the L1. So that's the goal. People try to say that it doesn't achieve that goal, but they argue all this weird stuff about like, oh, someone somewhere will be making more money, and so there's this ecological effect. But I think there's a huge ecological effect no matter what. You know what I mean? Like the fact that people are using USDT on Tron, and that's why people. The fact that Trump has the Trump meme coin on Solana, and the Melania meme coin on Solana, and the fact that the darknet markets are XMR only, and the fact that we have a counterparty guy in here trying to talk about whatever he was talking about, a new thing invented. That's why people say crypto instead of Bitcoin, because they see the world has crypto in it, and they don't use Bitcoin. They use this other stuff. And so that's the bigger ecological effect, is that the stuff is being tried out by people, and why not make it a Bitcoin project? That's what the way I see it, this is the last Bitcoin maximalist project.
Why not have Trump and Melania coin on Bitcoin? Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man, why not?
I know, but aren't you guys going down the same path as Luke, where you say we don't want certain users, we don't want certain...
Paul, I just don't care about penny ante bullshit that sustains no consistent market demand, is just highly high time preference.
Made me get out of bed. I was in bed, and then you triggered me so much, I had to get out, go downstairs, so my wife doesn't fucking see me get bad up on Spaces, because she's probably going to divorce me. Who the fuck is using shitcoins right now? Who's using any of this shit?
This is true, man. I was working at... I was working...
Well, I don't know anecdotally, but you can go to this site cryptofees.info, and you can see that people pay way more money to use coins that aren't Bitcoin. And you can see the transaction volume of USDT on Tron.
You
can see
that's USDT. That's fiat. That's fiat shit. That's fiat coins.
Well, it's still a crypto use case because it involves there's no.
So you want to make a Drivechain for a USDT or a fiat coin? That's where you think the market what?
It's not about what I want. Again, it's about we have all these people trying different things.
Hold on. You think you're under the impression, or you believe that these fiat coins are crypto? It's more crypto than fiat?
Well, I think the USDT does help crypto an awful lot, because you can now do these swaps and things. So now it's been a huge it's an Achilles heel of Bitcoin that you need the fiat leg of the exchange. It was always, if you went on Mt. Gox back in the day, it was very easy to send BTC in and out, but it was hard to get.
I'm with you. I mean, yeah, definitely more useful than before. Yeah.
So then why not have it just pay transaction fee in the Bitcoin network writ large, inclusive of the L2 fees?
What do you mean pay transaction fees?
When they mint the issuer a lot of
the USDT
influence over miners' revenue streams and what they do or don't support.
I don't know about that one.
Dude,
I'm just saying that whatever Tron does, we can also do it, and it doesn't have to affect Bitcoin Core or L1 or anyone else. Just the miners make more money.
Why do I? But what for? What? What? Why? Why do I want a fiat?
What do you mean? Why? They're paying customers.
Oh, I don't want a fucking fiat stablecoin issuer to start having more and more coercive influence over miners at the consensus level, having arbitrary power over where and on what.
I mean, Tether has that today because Tether's stacking Bitcoin, so they are an economic node. I would say USDC doesn't. They don't have any fucking sway over anything.
coercive power, but it's like it's a transaction fee. They're paying customers, so it's like it's the opposite of coercive.
It absolutely
How
is
many mints?
coercive, Paul.
How
In a
many times
normal
does
fork
Tether?
with Bitcoin itself, everybody gets both sides. They get even-handed distribution. They can make choices on both sides. The issuer of a stable coin decides instantly which side of the fork goes to zero and which side gets all of that miner revenue. And their users have zero control or input in it whatsoever.
Well, I think that, again, this is why we don't just want to have that one use case. We want to have all the use cases. So I also have this vision for, instead of Lightning, to have the payments L2s, and instead of CoinJoin, to have the Zcash Z-side L2s. So I have this whole thing where the stablecoins are just one piece, and the miners are making a huge amount of money. But ultimately, I think it's both fair and inevitable that the miners be loyal to whoever is actually paying the transaction fee. And I think that that's much healthier. Because the question is, like, what else would they be loyal to? And I feel like whatever that answer is would be much, much worse.
Paul, then
How about the value of Bitcoin?
Then Bitcoin is a failure, and it's going to implode on itself because the entire thing is incentive unstable, and anyone can just issue any new asset besides Bitcoin and outbid Bitcoin in miner revenue fees to censor Bitcoin to second-class Bitcoin.
Because just because you issue something doesn't mean it's automatically more valuable than Bitcoin. That would be a neat trick, but I don't think it bears any resemblance to the truth. You know what I mean? You can issue something new, but Tether had to build up their reputation and as you know, they went through many ups and downs and periods where people doubted that they would ever get their money back, and there were many crises. Now they have an extremely...
you have to consider the aggregate valuation of every possible tokenization scheme that exists. If you're talking about proof of work as a fully generalized thing that anyone can just jump on board and pay fees, and the whole thing is incentive unstable then.
Well, again, though, you pay the fee in BTC in my scheme, or in eCash in the fork. So even though you have assets, it's a little bit like Ethereum, where you would move the USDT, but you pay the ETH fee. So there's nothing you pay the BTC fee.
Dude, there is absolutely no way for you to enforce that or prevent miners from just accepting things and other tokens out of ban.
We have the L2 where called bit assets, and that's just how it works. So someone could make something else. My guess is that the miners don't want to have, everyone's stamp collection and to collect various, 12,000, Melania coin.
How about every major fiat currency? And then how about the equities? Oh, and why don't we toss REITs in there too? And let's just start thinking about everything we can tokenize where now an issuer and a centralized party decides if miners get or don't get on what side of what fork any revenue from any of these things. And let's see how fucking incentive stable an arrangement like that is. It's completely it's unstable. No individual token or use can have any predictability or stability about access to the system, about fucking censorship resistance in that system, because it's this fucking totally unstable equilibrium where any token can just butt in that has a valuation.
Yeah, and my thing, anyone could just make whatever token they want. You want to make Shinobi coin, you could make 10 trillion Shinobi coin on bit assets. That's an L2. And when you pay to create it, you pay in what would be BTC or be eCash in this case. And then when people move it, they pay the transaction fee. And I don't see anything wrong with that whatsoever. I think that's totally normal. And if we're talking about REITs and stocks, this is the way the real world works. People trade those things all the time. There is a transaction fee. There is a FINRA regulatory fee of some kind. There's flat fees. There's fees based on percent. That's how New York Stock Exchange works. That's how all these other things, CME, CBOE, that's how the real world works. It seems to work just fine without bursting into flames. I think we should try it. And I think that hating on the use case is a really bad sign. I mean, people said
Yeah, I think people are missing the point. Hold on a second. I think people are missing the point of tokenization in the first place, because people don't understand that the entire like market of Wall Street is rehypothecated, right? Does anybody know about securities lending? Like, if you understand that Patrick Byrne spent $20 million to prove that 75% of Goldman Sachs revenue came from equities lending, which is, lending out a stock 20x, because when you naked short sell a stock, you only have to locate the stock. You don't actually have to own it. And so the rehypothecation of equities is a major, major problem in our equities markets. And so like that problem needs to be solved. And I'm not saying I know the correct answer. I'm just saying there is a problem and a use case for tokenization.
And the solution is not Bitcoin.
Well, there is one. Hold on a second. There is one protocol, and just in a comparison to what Paul is doing, is that the only other L2 we have that has the same thermodynamics as Bitcoin is Counterparty.
Things do not benefit in any way from thermodynamic security. Shinobi token, which is redeemable to me for, I don't fucking know, a joint, is not fucking benefiting in any way whatsoever by using the Bitcoin blockchain, because I can just laugh in your face and go fuck yourself when you come.
Yeah, but here's the problem, Shinobi. We don't have free open markets, and so the problem here is that, hold on a sec. The problem here is that only a small group of people get to control access to capital markets. So you have to go to the SEC. You need $4 million and 40 lawyers to open any type of capital market, where in reality, a totally free market would allow anybody to create a token, start a company, and go from there.
Oh my God, dude. It's almost like you don't understand that the SEC, it wasn't just like, hey guys, I had this crazy idea for literally no reason. Like, the SEC exists for fucking reasons. The
SEC? Do you know the SEC has the same initials as a security exchange company that Charles Ponzi started? Do you know that little tidbit? The entire thing is a Ponzi, bro. What are you talking about?
I think, it doesn't matter like if the idea ultimately works or not, because I think the Drivechain idea is about like, people trying lots and lots of ideas. Some will fail, but I think, I don't care why someone wants to do it. If they want to do it, then they should be able to do it on Bitcoin. That's the BIP 300 idea. And what people have done, this used to be something that everyone believed, but over time, everyone has started to say, oh, we never wanted Bitcoin to be private. We never wanted Bitcoin to scale, or at least not like this. And we never wanted people to be able to do stuff on Bitcoin. And we never thought Bitcoin was open source and that people would just merge good ideas in. So I think, if we have to run every single idea by Shinobi, no offense, Shinobi, but I just don't think that you actually know any of this stuff that you're talking about.
If me like just poking holes in your idea is enough to stop it from going anywhere, then I don't know what to tell you, man. It's not.
I'm talking about the premise of, should, do you think every idea should like kind of run by you? And if you think it's bad, we automatically shouldn't do it in Bitcoin.
Oh, Paul, you do these like weird characterizations all the time.
But isn't that what
not we don't want Bitcoin to be private anymore. We don't want Bitcoin to scale anymore.
How do you explain it? Because BIP 300 also has the Z side.
Some ways of trying to do that come with negative downsides. That Bitcoin is an incentive system. And when you introduce very large, open-ended new variables into that incentive system, they can have negative consequences. They can be very unpredictable. You can't just go, this is the new incentive structure and that is it, because it is so fucking wide open-ended. And a lot of us are just not okay with those kinds of things, because as people who want Bitcoin to survive in the long term, this incentive structure is working. Let's not radically fuck with it until it's
so Michael Saylor is going to tokenize MicroStrategy stock. Trump is going to push tokenization of real world assets. Larry Fink is going to tokenize the equities market. So, Shinobi, what are you going to do when that starts happening? You want it to happen on Bitcoin, or you want it to happen on a shitcoin?
Shit, Bitcoin provides no value to those things. There is a lot of value.
Bitcoin is the anchor of truth for all of it. What are you talking about?
Money. There are a lot of good reasons to tokenize these fucking things, but tokenizing them on Bitcoin adds zero value to them. There is no value. You can timestamp anything with 32 bytes. You do not need to put tokens on Bitcoin. You can timestamp records of external fucking systems and verify them all fucking day to your heart's content. They are still trusted assets that require trust in a centralized issuer. And putting them on Bitcoin does not change that. It adds no value. It benefits them in no way whatsoever.
Yeah, I think just Bitcoiners have a fundamental misunderstanding of capital markets, and they don't understand that the free market through tokenization will be what the future is about, and people can issue their own tokens, and they can get rugged, or you can buy the Michael Saylor strategy token and do
I
it.
said in the start there?
Because what you're talking out of your asshole, bro. You don't know what you're talking
You
about.
guys might be talking past each other because G Money is.
We're going to tokenize. We're going to tokenize all this on Paul's fork. So that's what Paul's doing.
Right. So if you're right that it's a bad idea, then it will just be a bad idea on eCash.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it's all good. It's like a buffer.
Right.
And then we can have atomic swaps between eCash and Bitcoin, and everyone can live a happy life.
And we can, and we probably will. Almost certainly. But I think
Paul's launching Ravencoin.
Interesting to say that, like, okay, so Shinobi is a big Drivechain hater. He's probably the biggest Drivechain hater of them all.
I have a question. Why didn't you merge mine eCash?
Oh, well, I'll get to that in a second. But then Shinobi wrote this 5-part article for Bitcoin Magazine, and then he wrote this thing about like sidechains, the holy grail, the most important thing. And then there was like, I don't remember, it was maybe part 4 or something. So he wrote this huge thing, and part 4 is about Drivechain. I'm like, oh, good. Look, here's this long form piece of writing. I'm going to get to finally learn what Shinobi's problem is. And then, like, in one tiny little, he has this huge thing about Drivechain. And then this one tiny little sentence, he says, oh, that Drivechain relies on UASFs to keep the withdrawals honest, which is not even true. And then I was like, oh,
you said no.
It was like after he wrote this giant, after all these tweets, thousands and thousands of hating on this idea, he just has one sentence that's even true about UASF.
Mr. Hoddle, you shut up right now. Paul, that is
like,
because I intentionally separated the objective description of how the proposal worked into one article and my personal analysis of it into another one. Because as somebody who works as a journalist, I think it's important to present both. And not only
I didn't see
something
the other one, so I don't know. Maybe you can link it to me. I just saw this 5-part, like, well-researched thing about sidechains, and then this part 4 is the Drivechain part. And then I was like, this whole thing, it just has one negative sentence in the entire tweet.
I
one
had a
negative
whole
sentence
breakdown.
that's not even right. And I was like, what the heck?
The end of that series was my analysis of all the different designs. But I kept each isolated article before that a purely objective description of how they worked. So people could go into my analysis of things having an objective brief of how they all worked first, rather than just here's Shinobi's analysis.
But Paul, your solution for minor theft is UASF, right?
No, that's not right.
What is it?
Dude,
At the beginning, it's the draw of the fees more than what the miners would gain by attacking the chain and killing the source of the fees. And this is not that complicated.
Paul, you literally used to talk about the UASF button. You literally used to talk about
that's all you. I have tweets. I'm sure I could find right now of you saying we UASF it.
Well, I think I described like it's like a defense in depth kind of a thing where I define like these are some things that might happen in the course of giving it like a really thorough analysis, but that is not like the model. Like if you go to the original 2015 post, you can see that I have like 4 levels. I have like 4 levels of like what you might assume in terms of paranoia. Like
Dude, you had a UASF button. You used to talk about the UASF button and
But
like
do you know
clicking specific
why?
withdrawal transactions.
Because
Hit the UASF.
He changed his model since then. Now it's a new model. Relax.
No. If you go to the 2015 article, you see I have 4 layers of paranoia. And the reason this is important is because it's a deterrent. Defense is like an deterrent. So like if you're going to rob someone's house, you're going to think, well, wait a minute. Maybe they have a dog, but maybe they don't. Or maybe they have a gun and maybe they don't. And maybe they have an alarm, but maybe they don't. So even if you just kind of think that they might, it might be enough to persuade you to just leave well enough alone. And so that's why
the Bitcoin tenors should have probably showed you that that's not always true.
And so that I write about some of these things. I say, hey, listen, one of the things that I write about, could I just finish my point?
Just say I changed my mind.
Because I write about like, hey, if people are so against you that they're determined to UASF, then you'll never succeed with the theft. So maybe you shouldn't even try it because you lose a bunch of goodwill. You may destroy the brand of your mining pool. And maybe impossible.
Yeah, but shit, I mean, if you're at all-time highs and Bitcoin is at all-time highs, you're never going to see that money ever again. You pull the rug.
You used to talk about a little fucking window in the GUI that would show all the fucking
don't you understand the reason why? The reason why I talked about that is because the UASF is very, very, very easy to do. Because
Paul
has
you
to
can
be
just say I changed my mind, okay? Like you can just
let me finish though.
Because I changed my mind, Shinobi.
Because the withdrawals have to be announced and you have to make progress towards them months in advance. So it's very, very vulnerable to just like it will show up in the list. There'll be like 2 things. There can only be like 1 or 2 things in the list, either one real and one fake, or all of them being fake and only one making progress. So it's very, very easy. That's the point I was making. Is that it's like living in a world where someone can go out and buy an alarm and a gun and a dog in like for 10 seconds. So I'm saying actually the deterrent. You may feel that way, but it's very clear that you can read the.
I mean, at this point, it really doesn't matter anymore. Like this is not on Bitcoin. You're forking Bitcoin, so like.
Right.
Who cares, right? Like, whatever. At this point, it doesn't even matter. Like, if they steal, you could just hard fork them out. Like, you can do whatever you want.
Huddle, I've been doing this for 10 years. No, Paul, you are gaslighting me. We have been doing this.
No. I know listen, but that was on Bitcoin. Before, but Shinobi, time out. Everything he was saying before was on Bitcoin. So UASF, that's all Bitcoin. Now he's not doing it on Bitcoin. He's doing it on his own his own chain. And when you're doing it on your own chain, you can do whatever the fuck he wants. Like you could fork in, fork out, whatever you want.
I don't think I'll have that much control over it after it launches because it will be kind of on autopilot.
You'll have control for the foreseeable future, Paul. I promise you.
No, I don't think
what you say will happen.
How many of Satoshi's coins are you going to have yourself, Paul?
Oh, well, I don't know if I should talk about who's getting the coins, but almost all of them.
Yeah, of course not.
If this is an honest airdrop, it's all got to be public.
Yeah,
not an honest airdrop, though, is it?
It's not an honest airdrop.
People,
of
course, you'll see on which UTXOs end up getting them. So,
yeah, but we don't know who the fuck they are.
Yeah, but why would anyone give that information?
This is interesting. Well, this is an interesting question. When you reassign those UTXOs, you're moving them at the time of the fork immediately, or what?
That's right.
Okay, so you'll see them immediately move. Okay, but you don't
He
necessarily
said it's
know
the investors,
who they're moving
Paul.
to.
He said it's the investors.
I'll advertise, Paul. I'll advertise. Hook me up with some coins. I'll advertise. Nice UTXO fork. I'm in.
Yeah, if you guys, the more you guys show it, the more it might be worth.
Put a little pile aside for Mr. Huddle.
I'm not going to let you get away with trying to gaslight me, Paul. You talked about a UASF.
Yeah, but Bitcoin. It's not like the first line of defense or the main line of defense or what. It's just a discussion of why people would not even want to sacrifice
it was
their goodwill.
Discussing a feature to prevent theft.
That was for Bitcoin. This is eCash.
I mean,
two different things.
Anyone who's listening who cares, you got Shinobi and Peter Todd on one side, And Peter Todd also did a piece of writing, and basically every single sentence, I made a giant image, I screenshotted the image, and basically every single sentence Peter said was wrong. And I go through it in detail. And so you got Shinobi and Peter on one side, and then you could go to layer2labs.com/friends, and you can see all the people who think that this is at least worth trying. As
it's definitely worth trying on another chain, like your chain.
And this includes Robin Linus, this includes Adam Back, this includes Rene Picard, Astron Lightning.
Shinobi, why do you have a problem with eCash?
With what? Sorry, with what?
No, I'm asking Shinobi. What's the problem with He's not doing it on Bitcoin.
You are the one who is forking off of Bitcoin. I rest my case.
Yeah, but so what? He knows that.
Who cares?
He knows that. He admits this isn't a problem. Like he's willing to.
Don't you think Shinobi's coming? I
that.
don't think he's coming from the perspective that he'd rather
If
not
this
split.
was just me and Peter
share.
Todd, how did me and just Peter Todd stop Bitcoin from doing something?
No,
I don't think people who don't like the idea. People who do like the idea versus the idea.
If somebody doesn't like the idea, it doesn't mean they could stop you from fucking doing that idea. Like you could still do it. You could have easily tried to fork a soft fork yourself.
Talking to me?
Those fuckers did it at 55%. Yeah, you could have done a soft fork.
No, but of course, it would end the same way as Bitcoin. We do have that. That's what the BIP300 activator is. That's basically the activation client. So we have that. We put that out, and that's that.
No one wrote that.
So that's an option. Bitcoin could still add BIP300, 301, really at any time. And it can for the foreseeable future, but I think we all know that it won't. And I don't think it's because BIP300 is a bad idea. I just think it's because no one's adding anything. And no one has added anything in the last 10 years except for 2 soft forks to support Lightning. And now people are pulling up the ladder behind them, or people don't know. The knowledge of how to do the soft fork has been lost. So I don't think
everything is going as planned.
All right. We do have a hand.
Everything is going according to plan.
We have someone with a hand up.
Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, Wicked. Hey, Paul. Good to be here. Good to have you up here. I was on one of Wicked Spaces Saturday, actually, and asked a question regarding the eCash hard fork, particularly the fact that, or I believe it does not have replay protection. And if that's true, without replay protection, how would you suggest people split their UTXO set so that they don't send original BTC to like an eCash wallet or an eCash DEX?
You don't have replay protection?
Unfortunately, I think I misexplained this because I've given people the wrong idea. So it must be partially my fault to some extent. But what it does have replay protection, but what it does not have is by default, it does not. So what I had in mind was people would switch to our software if they cared, and then our software would automatically split the coins. So we would never do something where, or at least by default it doesn't, and it would like try to warn you. It would never do something where you send the eCash around and it sends BTC. And that was never even on my mind that would even happen. And what I did have in mind, though, was that if people say, hey, I'm not even paying any attention to this eCash hard fork, I'm going to send my BTC somewhere, well, then the eCash will go to the new owner as well. And I like that because I think, well, if you're not paying attention, then you don't want it. And maybe it'll go to someone who does want it and they can split it. So if you like, okay, so first of all, if you go to github.com/ecash-com, then there's a fast fax repo that's pinned. And that has
This sounds like a state-led psyop, and let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Now, if someone really wants more eCash, what would they do? They would probably put all their Bitcoin on an exchange.
That's how you dox it.
Withdraw it.
So dox all their Bitcoin, put it on the exchange
I don't think
first,
this is
and
big
then
enough.
withdraw it.
Yeah,
Withdraw it to get more eCash.
I hope that
from the
people,
exchange.
I think that's funny, and that's called phishing and I think there's already groups that want to do that. And some of them were disappointed
Right,
about
but
the phased launch.
That's doxing their set, though.
They wanted to.
It's bad. Bad for privacy. Is that what you're trying to do right now, Paul?
That's any UTXO fork.
Right, I agree.
No, because here you are explicitly doxing it by going to a KYC or going to an exchange first.
This KYC exchange thing, I actually think it's pretty weak. Like, for example,
Wait. What do you mean? Why do I have to go to a KYC exchange
Because when you withdraw it from the KYC, so when you withdraw the BTC from the exchange, you are assuming the exchange isn't going to be paying attention and will also give you the eCash.
Yeah, so it might give you lots and
free.
lots. You can keep depositing and withdrawing. You get different eCash all the time, but
You just keep doing it
Paul,
over
that's
and
not
over.
good. Paul, that's not good.
I
We gotta
like.
fix
I think
that.
that's funny. I think it's great.
No, it's actually. I think it actually is kind of funny.
I would very much
Paul.
caution anybody against doing something like that because the legality of that is very, very.
Have you talked to exchanges about this yet? Like, do they know that? Like,
Told people like, this is how it is,
think that
and this
adds
is how
some
and
fun
if
to
you
the
want, if
fork,
you still
for
want to
sure.
ignore it, listen to ignore it. I think it's a perfectly just.
Well, this is my question, Paul. I don't want to ignore it, but I'm not also inclined to just necessarily send my Bitcoin UTXOs.
So that's not what you have to do. You just have to run the new software and move your
Right, and that's what I don't. What if I don't want to do that? What if I want to?
So there's a way of splitting. And again, if you go to and we link to, if you just go to ecash.com and click the GitHub icon in the top right, but it's github.com/ecash-com/fastfacts. There's a fast facts repo that it has lots of facts, like how to mine, how to split the coins, whatever. A lot of stuff is up there. Like, what are the ports?
Have you decided on the difficulty yet?
I thought you were supposed to be you were supposed to be telling me which block or whatever I should have. But no, I think one advantage. There's many advantages.
Well, hold on, Paul. Why not just add replay protection and make it simple?
Well, there is opt-in replay.
Then it's not as fun. Yeah. Then it's.
I think the alternative is to have immediate total transaction replay, but I don't think that. I don't like that because that's basically.
I mean, but if you want exchanges to if you want all exchanges to eventually list it, wouldn't you need that?
Once they list it, then
but then they're
going to run that software.
Yeah, then they know how.
It's only the ones who aren't that get game.
Yeah, I think I want to reward,
which makes it actually kind of gameable for the users who are interested in it. I mean, I think it's actually kind of an interesting idea.
There you go.
Although legally,
you can say it's a cool idea,
legally,
Paul.
I don't know if legally, I don't know if it's a great idea, but
I just think if you're not paying attention, you're going to get left behind. So we punish that which stumbles must also be pushed. We're Frederick
Nietzsche. Better not fucking put malware in this fucking software. People are going to be downloading.
That's what I was going to explain. You guys ask an awful lot of questions at once. I got to explain. You can do it even without.
Big brains here.
You don't download our software. You can. It's the end lock time. It's the block. It's whatever. It's like 499,999,999. But I would look up the exact number so you don't get it wrong. This is you make the transaction in the Bitcoin wallet. You just set end lock time to this value, and this will produce a valid Bitcoin transaction. But it can't be broadcast for like 500 years or something. So you won't have to worry about it. And but on eCash it is valid. That's like that particular date is a backdoor, so we'll just ignore it.
So you can just PSBT it and just sign it with your hardware wallet and shit.
I didn't exactly hear what you said. You broke up a little bit, but
so you can just grab a PSBT and just sign it with a hardware wallet.
Yeah, anything that lets you control the end lock time, and then you don't have to import your private keys into anything invented by us. I also didn't want, because I also thought, well, that's kind of a big ask to ask people to put their real Bitcoin private keys.
Especially right now, especially in the moments that we have to.
Right.
See, everybody, I fucking told you Paul would consider all this shit. Even he isn't that big of a fucking dick.
And and I thought that's like a big ask, and we didn't want I was kind of at first thinking maybe it would be okay if. Well, you guys don't really care that much about the thought process because this guy has his hand up again. So let's hear what he has to say.
I think he forgot to put his hand down.
ATF? No? Did he have to say something else or no?
Maybe not. Another question.
I don't see my hand up, guys.
Oh, weird.
I don't see this thing.
God, this app though, I swear to God, this app is so popular. I'm talking about X, Twitter, and the fact, and I know that Elon fired 80% of the people and it still works and it has all these new features, which is great. But I mean, why is the reliability so bad? It just baffles me. It's such an important app.
So hold on. The layer 1 is you're lowering the block size, right? It's going to be 300 kilobytes.
Well, people don't seem to really care about that. I thought that would be interesting, and I'd be like, we're the real small blocker chain now. And I almost thought that would get carve off the Luke dimension. Now, over time, I think the better thing, because everything about the L1 will be exactly the same as Bitcoin Core. And I was just thinking, you know what, maybe we'll just drop this thing. This is like the only change made other than the phased rollout. See, the phased rollout is also good because it lets people practice phishing for the exchange, lets people practice. It gives us some idea what the price and the initial difficulty should be, Wicked. So it's kind of easier to have it not be chaotic. So I think the phased rollout has an awful lot of advantages, including stuff about this type of thing. So yeah.
What's going to be the first drive chain? Do you know? Did anyone?
No, we already have. We make 7, and there's already 4 or 5 that other people have made. So there's quite a.
Wait, you made 7?
Yes. Oh yes.
Okay. What are they?
They've been out for a while. They've been out for a very long time.
What are the features?
Back when Peter Todd was saying no one's written any software for this, he said that.
What are the features?
One is large blocks for scaling, so that's called Thunder.
How large?
You can go on GitHub and look at the tests yourself. Test it to 960 megabytes, but of course it wouldn't be that. It would
Damn, 960 megabyte block size. Holy shit!
Start low. It started like 8 and grow geometrically to 800. The first one would. But yeah, you've tested with 14 of these.
Big ass blockchain.
With 14 of these, it can cover every transaction in the world, including cash, credit card, etc., WeChat Pay. That's back of the envelope math. But actually, and then with the 14 of those, you have every transaction in the world. And actually, the performance is very good. We had a hackathon about the performance last summer. So you can see the tests for yourself on GitHub. You can see the machines.
This is on the large block size.
L2, right.
L2. And you don't need to run a node on this L2? Like, don't you need a node?
Yeah, people need a node, but the node performance is very, very good. It can do, you can...
But if it's 900, if it's over 900 megabyte block size limit and the chain gets full, like if people use the entire block size, what kind of fucking node do you need for that?
It's already been, you can see the exact numbers, the exact machines that do the benchmark. You can see the exact bandwidth usage on the tests. On GitHub. It's all open source. You could see the test. You could see the hackathon we did. It's called, I think it's called Summer 2025 Performance Hackathon. I could get the link and post it in the nest. And
what were the results? How big of a hard drive? How much RAM do you need for a full, like, if the chain is filled with 900 megabytes worth of freaking transaction
no, it's
for
only,
the next, like, 50 years?
It's only a few thousand, maybe $2,000 to set up and maybe $1,000 a month to operate. So it's some amount, but it's not like some magically insurmountable amount. Unlike the Lightning Network, which will never work at all, no matter what people do. Probably the same for ARC and Fediment, because the people behind Fediment don't.
So this would be basically, this layer would be for like visas, right? Like this would be the layer that Visa would be using and MasterCard. Okay. And then there'll be another layer that has small blocks for plebs.
Well, yeah, the L1, the idea was make the L1 very small.
Oh, that's the L1. L1 would be the pleb for plebs.
I don't think people care because in practice, even Bitcoin's blocks are not even full anyway. So it's not.
No, I don't think anybody cares about anything, dude. I really think most of the shit is being lived on exchanges and people are just trading it like that. They've been doing basically since day one. I think
two other
features
are bit assets, which is like that's like your NFT, Solana meme coin, whatever USDT stablecoin backed thing that Shinobi really doesn't like. So that's like bit assets. And then there's bit names, which is like a souped up version of Namecoin. But Shinobi's going to have trouble hating on that one because Satoshi helped invent Namecoin. He was very enthusiastic about it.
You already have bases on Bitcoin.
I don't think, why would Shinobi even on Bitcoin? I can understand, but like this is a different chain completely.
It's a hater.
So, no, we already have the Spaces protocol on Bitcoin.
I didn't hear what he said. What did he say? What do we have in Bitcoin?
We have the Spaces protocol on Bitcoin already.
I've never heard of it.
I mean, whatever. It's just a shitcoin with different features. Like, okay, there's a lot of them.
One made by someone else is Zside, which is Zcash based. So it uses like the Z. You have the Z addresses from Zcash world to hide the sender, the receiver, the amount. Very, very strong privacy. of course, is more of a risk with the experimental cryptography. Like they had a bug, but they fixed it. So
now an exchange. So if I'm in the Zcash sidechain, and I say like an exchange would have to accept that sidechain, right, in order for me to send.
Well, I think they probably would not. I would imagine this would be like the non-exchanged L2, right? But it doesn't matter because from the L1 you can get to the L2 and back. So that's how I think. I don't think people would put this on the exchange because the exchange.
The UTXOs get broken up. So, like, if I send a UTXO on layer 1 to layer 2 to like one of the side chains, and then I send it back to layer 1, do I get the same UTXO or do I get a different UTXO at that point?
No, you get a different UTXO, and I invented this thing called Meltcast, and Meltcast like rinses it makes it. Because it's so easy. People often misuse the privacy on Zcash. So I have like a front end user experience thing to try to stop that from happening.
No, but I mean like not just the privacy second like sidechain. I'm talking about like any second layer. If I send a UTXO into a sidechain, when I bring it back into layer 1, it's always going to be a different UTXO?
Yes.
So it's like a mixture basically. You could use these side chains just in and out as a mixer, more or less.
I think people would, and that's what Meltcast.
I think that's going to be the biggest use case. It's just people are going to fucking use it to mix their. I mean, if it ever gets used, and people are trying to like stay private and keep their wallets private.
Well, I think the community is very important. Obviously that's kind of what kicked all this off. I think that's a very important. Because that was how I used to explain Bitcoin to people. As I would say, well, hey. Bitcoin can do every dark market transaction, but of course it can also end up doing every light market transaction. So it's only a matter of time before it starts taking over the world. That was like how I explained Bitcoin like in 2013 to people.
Yeah. The only thing I'm thinking is that all this stuff needs liquidity for it to be used, and most of the liquidity is staying on exchanges and no one's actually using any of these fucking things. So I don't know how interesting it would be, but if in a world where actually people care about the tech and people started using these things, then it could get more interesting, but I just don't think anyone cares about anything.
There's another good thing about having many different L2s is that they do kind of share liquidity to some extent. To some extent, they split liquidity, but like to some extent, like if the only exchange that's supported is one of the Thunder scaling L2s, but none of the other L2s are supported, that's not so bad because you then onboard people that way, and then they just use the software to move among the L2s. So it's kind of like you just need to sneak one across the line. I think that's also another reason why USDT is actually really good, because it's like, okay, maybe people don't, maybe it's hard to operate an exchange, but maybe it's easier to just say, okay, listen, we'll have a fully regulated KYC thing where you swap $100 for 100 USDT. But then once you're in the USDT world, now that's it. You can now do cryptographic swaps, and now you've escaped into cyberspace. And so I think that is also, all this stuff is very good. That's all the more reason to have USDT on Bitcoin or on eCash in this case.
Fundamentals need work, but I think we could do something with it. I think we could definitely do something with it.
But that's part of the bit assets is you have the fundamentals where you just say anyone who wants to issue whatever, Mr. HODL coin, you just do that over there. And then you have your like pump up fund. And then, to appease the people who hate all this thing, you just remind them that, hey, this is all sequestered. This is all trapped in its own L2. And if you don't, this isn't on L1 anymore, and this isn't on any of the other L2s. So it's like,
it doesn't even matter. It's on eCash. It's not on Bitcoin. So like, even if it's on L1, who gives a shit? It's on a whole different chain.
Yeah. Well, you might think that the same problems that people raised in BTC would eventually come to any other coin that grew.
Nah, I don't think so. I think there's a really specific reason why people try to keep Bitcoin as small as possible and as nimble as possible. I don't think it really matters for other altcoins. I don't think, maybe, but I don't think any other altcoin community is talking about keeping the blockchain as small as efficient as possible. I don't think anyone's talking about that.
Yeah, that's why I thought it would be cool to shrink the block size. Say, oh, look how different we are. Like Bitcoin Cash expanded it, Bitcoin SV expanded, but no one seems to really have cared about us shrinking it. So I don't. Maybe they just don't care either way, or maybe they don't believe us or something. Also, it's kind of like
the reason I was for shrinking it was because we had a bunch of people that were trying to get fucking gigabyte blocks. So I'm like, whoa. These people are going one way. I'm just going to go extreme the other way. And Luke was like, yeah, 300 kilobytes. That's the one. I'm like, all right, fuck it, yeah, 300 kilobytes. But that's not because I wanted it. It's just because if we have an entire group that are trying to fucking raise the block size limit, I felt like it was good to have an entire group that wanted to lower the block size limit just to even it out, you know?
Mm-hmm. So you didn't actually have an opinion.
I didn't care. No, I thought 1 megabyte's fine. I didn't really give a shit if we. I mean, I knew like. So I knew that Sega was a block size increase, but all the fucking big block hard forkers were like, no, it's just making it more efficient, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, it's a block size increase. That's what it is. So then I'm like, all right, I guess we're fucking compromising on 4 megabytes. So like, that's the fucking compromise. So that's where it stuck, but I really didn't care. I thought 1 megabyte was fine. Once we had the witness discount, I was like, fuck it, 4 megabytes, I guess it's fine. But I really was like, we needed to even out the playing field. Like we have an entire group, like fucking Gavin wanted, like, what was it? He wanted like 30 megabyte block size limit. I remember Adam Back wanted to raise it from 2, 4, 6, and then 8, like every 3 or 4 years or something like that. Like everyone's wanting to raise the block size. I'm like, whoa. We need to slow down with this. And then when I talked to Greg Maxwell, he was like, can't raise the block size like that. It's crazy. And then I was like, yeah, that's fucking crazy. And then Satoshi was talking about how, users are going to become tyrannical and wanted to lower the block size limit so they could run Bitcoin on nodes. So then I was like, yeah, okay, this is my camp right here. But I really didn't care. That was more just a posturing thing.
Well, people have made the argument that says, hey, if you actually have scaling in layers and your layers actually do meet whatever need, you want for whichever number of people, 8 billion people or just whatever number of people, then actually L1 is like, each block is like 2,000 transactions and change. So that's 10 minutes, 2,000. So every 24 hours is like 144 blocks. So actually that's kind of overkill for people to just settle among, like you can kind of look at the ratio of how many, when you make a normal transaction with the debit card, if you have if you're in America and you're at like Wells Fargo and someone else is at Chase, like how many of them are within the bank and then how many of them are across banks using the Fed or using a clearinghouse? And then you could say, how many of them are within the United States, like within the US Federal Reserve System versus within the Euro system versus how many are across, how many have to settle using the Bank of International Settlements or whatever. So it's like, 10,000 to 1 or like 100,000 to 1 or something. So it's kind of like, okay, actually, you don't need that many to settle, right? So some people have said actually the L1 block size is way too big because the right way is to scale in layers and then just settle among the layers with L1. Although paradoxically, people have said the opposite thing when they talk about unilateral exit. I don't know if they mean to say this or not, but when they talk about unilateral exit, they're saying basically that they want everyone to be able to leave at least one of the L2s and end up on L1, but that's not possible unless L1 is very big. So that whole criterion doesn't really make any sense. But I think if you want to live on the L2s, which is exactly how I think it should work and how it will work, then actually the L1 doesn't need that much. It doesn't need 2,500 transactions every 10 minutes.
No, but it needs demand. It needs the value to go up. It needs security, right? It needs hash power. Like it needs actual demand of the token of the layer 1 token. Because if that layer 1 token doesn't have demand, then you're going to have a problem with the security of everything else.
Well, yeah, as you know, part of the design is to emphasize merge mining as just this unlimited source of mining revenues, so that just more and more and more mining revenues over time, and that perfectly solves security.
I forgot about the merge mining. So basically, you need Bitcoin to be in demand at that point.
No, because the L2s are merge mined with the eCash L1. So in the BIP 300 world, they would be merge mined with Bitcoin L1. But in the eCash world, so the Wicked asked this earlier, about.
So wait, how is it what? Oh, wait a minute. That's right. You're doing SHA-256. You're keeping SHA-256. You're not merge mining with Bitcoin. Why don't you just merge mining with Bitcoin then? Why don't you just merge mine eCash with Bitcoin?
Well, because that would make it so that the new eCash could never survive without, you want.
Yeah, I think if you see there's an actual market that people are actually using this shit and are interested, you could just hard fork again and split away from Bitcoin.
Well, of course you could.
But in the meantime, to get bootstrap, you just merge mine with Bitcoin, bootstrap the network, get everything going, get your layer 2s going, and then hard fork away from Bitcoin later.
I don't think it actually helps very much, because if you think about it, yeah, if you merge mine, like merge mining is when all the chains are kind of cooperating. So then it's good. But if they're competitors, then you have one coin that, maybe let's just say that the total value, it's like, what's the total value of the BTC block reward? We have to just guess, but it would be something like 3 Bitcoin plus a little bit more, plus some time, multiplied by 70,000 or something. So let's just call it 200. Let's just call it $250,000. So that's the value of every BTC block every 10 minutes. Now, even if it's merge mined, then the eCash L1, if it were merge mined with BTC, it would have 100% of some high percent, 80% of the hash rate, because you can check the cool BitMEX research, had some cool articles. RIP, pour one out for BitMEX research that is going away, but they have a great merge mining article. So the point is, let's just say they have 100%, but still you're only contributing maybe that's only, let's say if it's 1% of the value, then if it's the prices are 1%, you know what I'm trying to say? Like BTC is 100K, it's $1,000. Then that would only be, instead of $250,000, that would only be $2,500. So you still don't get a lot of loyalty from the miners. You know what I mean? Like you get some, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that they really want to keep you around. And then versus,
if you go, wouldn't you go to a pool and see because not all pools mine Namecoin, right? I think there's a few of them that will distribute Namecoin.
Well, really, it's a very, very high percent. You can check the BitMEX research, and it's, even though there was a time, like a story I used to tell often, even I would tell the story in 2014 and 2015, back in those years. I would say, well, listen, at that time, the value of a Bitcoin block was like $5,000-$6,000, but the value of the entire Namecoin block was literally $5. So it was like 1/1000th.
Yeah, it's nothing.
But still, it had 80% merge mining, and I don't know. I think that may have just been.
I think
people wanted.
I think because people thought there was potential there. I thought there was fucking potential with Namecoin. I thought it was genius.
Yeah, me too. So do I. I think it's great.
I thought there was, and I actually went to the pools that I made sure to get my fucking Namecoin when I was mining Bitcoin. I went out of my way to make sure I had a Namecoin wallet and everything. So yeah, even though there wasn't much of a reward there, I think people thought that there was going to be potential there, and why waste? If you're already going to mine Bitcoin, why not also get Namecoin? I would just think the reason I would think merge mining with eCash would make sense is because now you don't have to fucking guess on the difficulty, and you don't have to guess on it. You could see how the market, if people are interested in it, and if people are interested in it, now you can kind of feel where you would set the difficulty at a certain later time when you split away. I don't know.
That does help. The plan for that is just to have the test runs and see where that difficulty lands, and try to have fork futures to see what the eventual price will be, to see where that lands. But I think what I was trying to say is that it doesn't ultimately help you that much, because think about it. If the miners, they decide that they don't want to support it anymore because it's only 10 cents and then Bitcoin's, $250,000, then they can still drop you. And at that point, you're stuck with a super high. But it is cool. Vanilla merge mining is kind of neat, because the way Namecoin works is that it could still, you can either mine Namecoin without using the merge mining, or you can use it from anything that is Bitcoin shaped. So there was a time in 2017 where the difficulties were oscillating between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and actually Namecoin was skimming the cream off of. So when one was higher than the other, it would merge mine using those blocks, and then when the difficulty switched and the miners switched to Bitcoin Cash, those were also Namecoin blocks. So and Namecoin actually had the highest hash rate for a period of time in 2017 as a result of the vanilla merge mining, which is funny. But you see, this just goes to show you that the hash rate, to some extent, it helps. Like that would really, really help if some random person, like some random crazy billionaire wanted to attack Namecoin. So that helps, but it doesn't actually help. It's it's kind of like you get Foundry, but you only get like 0.5% of their mind share, their attention. So it's kind of like then if you lose them, it's not. So I thought it would be better to just have a clean break, because the hard fork, you want it to have like its own fate. I think actually you don't want it to really be tied. You want them to be like alternatives. I think that's just my opinion. But I think
there were a lot. I mean, like there was a point where there was a lot of shots, 56 coins at one point, and eventually most of them all started to merge mine with Bitcoin. But today, I don't think any of them do anymore. Because I remember Mazacoin. Do you remember Mazacoin, that like Indian tribe coin? They were shots at 56, and then eventually, it wasn't profitable, and they ended up merge mining with Bitcoin. But I think it only lasted for like a few months, and then miners kind of just dropped them. But that all shot to 56 coins were merge mining with Bitcoin at some point until they ended up getting dropped. But they didn't start out merge mining, right? They started out on their own, like kind of like Doge. Like Doge started out on its own, and then it merge mined with Litecoin.
I think merge mining with BTC makes perfect sense when Namecoin was invented, because the idea was that Namecoin would be a separate blockchain that had a separate purpose, that was doing this BitDNS name thing, and it wouldn't interfere with BTC. And so the two would cooperate. But I think that's actually bad. Like, it's kind of like, what if you were saying, like, you're going to have Walmart compete with Sears, or you're going to have Amazon compete with Walmart, and then you want them to have some kind of like cooperative relationship. I think that is actually not a good idea. That's just not healthy. It would be like, what if should the Republican Party merge mine with the Democratic Party? I think that's actually not good.
No, maybe not, but maybe like to bootstrap a new party, you would merge mine, and then you go on your own way after that.
And then anti-merge mine. Yeah.
And then anti-merge mine after that. Like, you build up the brand, you build up all of it, and then you go on your way. Because I think it's just really, really hard to fucking bootstrap from Genesis these days. Like, in 2016, when shitcoins were popular, 2017, 2018, yeah. But I think bootstrapping from Genesis today is going to be way more difficult. But maybe I'm wrong.
No, I do think it will be difficult. But I think it's kind of like, all the stuff that would make it hard on day one would then apply also to like the day at which you shut off the merge mining that you were sort of relying on. So I kind of think it just like kicks the can down the road.
Yeah, but you would kind of get the feeling of like something. You would see like what the price of the tokens are, like the layer 2s, if there's actual demand on these layer 2s, like you would see it before.
We do the staged launch. It's also because like there was so much just cultural chaos in Bitcoin that was like, it's like overwhelming with Coldcard and with all this other stuff. So it's like, okay,
a lot of stuff right now. Yep.
Ramp it up a little bit.
And you postponed it, right? It's no longer in August. Now it's in October.
You do get in August. You still get basically the same thing, but it's like officially in October. So in August, you still get the alpha release, basically. That's what we call it now. So I think it would have been fine to do it in August, but it was just like, there was just so much stuff. See, the funny thing is, I was, like many of you here, I thought 110 was a complete nothing, anything. And I thought it would get like no attention, and it would also just collapse and just die off, which, of course, a lot of that was right. But it was just like, I had, if we could do it over, I was just thinking like, oh, I want to announce it before Las Vegas conference. And then I was thinking we want to give people like 4 months is probably enough time to have people think about it. So that was like, didn't even think at all about it being like so close to this 110 thing or whatever. I was more in favor of like trying to let people have a long time to think about it. But
did you point Kimmy? Did you point Kimmy at eCash at?
Well, we have an ongoing bug bounty contest where you can win first, second, third place, and certainly those people are doing lots of AI stuff. So
Yeah, I think Portland's well aware of the bug bounty, so I think he's been pointing Kimmy at eCash. Scoop up some of those rewards.
People, that's also partly, that has also gone because we've done stuff like that before, and people are now like the amount of just raw bug finding firepower is very high, and you can see that a lot of things have been closing down, some temporarily, but you can see a lot of Bitcoin projects have said that I think this is probably one of the worst times to launch any software project, let alone a crypto project.
Yeah, man. You definitely picked a good time to do it.
Yeah, so I think, slowing it down it's disappointing for me because I was thinking we said this date, so it's a matter of integrity to some extent, and people think it'll be delayed forever. But, I think just it's slower is kind of better for something. And it has a lot of advantages rolling it out in stages. So this is cool. Everyone can practice with this one, then you can practice again with September, and then everyone can have all their stuff totally ready to go for end of October. And I think that should be more fun for everyone.
All right. I'm going to bed.
I'm going to bed too. Good night. Peace.
Well, hey, thanks a lot
Thanks for coming up.
inviting me
Coming
up.
up, guys.
See ya.
Talk to you later, Paul.